Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning.
Or is it afternoon? I'm like, oh, gosh. There's a lot on the plate today, but it's odd stuff. Before we get started, I just want to say that I'm sensing, I'm intuiting. There's a change in the wind. Yeah, just on instinct. I'm going to throw out a couple of things to you today that I say are leading to some of this change that I feel is coming. So let's just start there. Before we start there, though, I want to talk about COVID just a little bit. I want to catch everybody up on where we are on this. It's 562,000 Americans have died from the virus. There's about 31 million confirmed cases of the virus countrywide. I just want to say it's very hard to get the stats right now. It's not the lead story. Google, wherever you go to do research, 2 days behind. I don't know what that's about. There is good news, though, that the vaccine distribution that began on December 14th, now more than 165 million doses have been administered. And if I do my math right, Matt, that's a third of the way towards full vaccination for the country, if we can even get to full. But sadly, there are some who won't be able to get vaccinated. It's too late. And that's part of the story, too. Large swaths of Americans are ignoring the warnings that we are a long way from being safe from the virus. And I want to talk a bit about that. Cases are on the rise all over the country, but this is interesting. New York, Michigan, Florida, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey make up 44% of all the new infections. I would think they're all from Florida originally, okay? Those are our great visitors states. But anyway, that's kind of it. We're doing real well on those. We're ahead of schedule. Biden says by the 14th of April, everyone will be able to get a shot. That was a long-winded opening. I apologize. What say you?
Well, it's good news that the patients are accelerating. I think they topped 4 million in one day earlier this week. That's terrific. I think, since generally people need 2 shots. I think it's less said in terms of a third. But, they're getting there. And the important thing is that vulnerable largely gotten their shots. 80% have died or over 6. So this is, it can affect everyone, but it's, as it really affects older Americans a lot more. And they're getting...
People are now skipping the second dose, Matt.
Well, that is an issue. I mean, it's, it's better if you have 2. It's still much better to have 1 than none. So, it's, you want people to take the full dosage, of course.
I want to bring this piece up too, because we're going to look back at this in 10 years and there's going to be, a whole reconstruction of what had happened and how it happened and what it really meant and what was safe and what wasn't, what helped, what didn't. But it's interesting to me that Texas cases are down since Governor Abbott lifted the mask mandate. And to be fair, they are down. Whether that's because people are staying home regardless, they're still scared or more scared or whatever. But I think it's fair to say that all these statistics that we keep bringing up and naming and quoting, there are exceptions to rules all over the place with this thing. They even said today that they don't think it spreads, from surface to surface, and this is a year and something in. So it's an interesting thing, this COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, just because restrictions might be lifted doesn't mean everybody stop using masks or, doing other, preventative behaviors. So it's...
I will say this. Corporations are continuing to keep their signs up in their stores. Do not come into our store without a mask. I'm shocked about that down here particularly, but they are. And I've seen them pull people over and say, no, I don't care whether it's a mandate or not. Our store says, even now, you wear the mask. So I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, well, I think their legal departments don't want the medical advice they get is telling them not to. I don't think they want to do anything that's going to hurt shareholders. So I can understand why, especially your big box retailers are going to be cautious about this.
How cynical.
So, well, okay, and it's their love of their customers.
All right, we move on. Unless you have something further to say on COVID. Nothing.
No. Okay. You're feeling good since your second shot?
Yeah, but good. I'll tell you, I did have another reaction. Did I tell you about that?
Not the immediate one.
No.
After the second shot.
Yeah.
But another one.
Yeah, and I found out it's a thing where my arm started to itch.
Yeah, boy.
And itch, and itch, and itch. And then I went online and discovered that I'm not the only one who gets the itch a couple of weeks later. But it seems better now, and I feel better now. Maybe it's because I've taken back to bike riding. So I'm raring to go. We were talking about what's going on down here in terms of the vaccine. Let's talk what's going down here in terms of, oh my God, this is a hellhole. Matt Gaetz, Ron DeSantis, where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with Gaetz. Nothing seems to be going his way. I think from the New York Times that he sought a big blanket pardon before Trump left office. At a time when he would have known that he was under legal scrutiny. And even Trump wouldn't touch it.
Yeah, right? Go figure.
Yeah, his pardon attempt went no. So, he's known for a while that trouble. This other state of county official in Florida was talking to the feds,
Well, they think they think he's talking a lot, that guy, right now.
Well, I think he's clearly rolled on Gaetz, yeah.
But here's the thing, Matt, what I don't understand. This is such a clear case. I mean, it's just coming from everywhere. This drops, this drops, this drops. It's extraordinary to me that the press has not held Republicans accountable to making a statement on this. And they have not. Get that microphone in front of the big guys and, talk. This is one of your own. This isn't just, two adults and Andrew Cuomo kind of, he may have put his hand in the wrong place or some crazy whatever. This is, pedophilia, to put it for what it's worth. And I just don't understand, the lack of accountability, to the Republican Party by the media, if not on their own, because none of them are talking either. Curious what you think about that.
Yeah, well, they could definitely press them harder. I think they've, Kevin McCarthy, the Republican, had a brief statement. People have too, but they could keep pressing him because it's, it's a big deal, and he's still going to work every day. And, generally, people are able, party leaders are able to push people out if they want to. Katie Hill out, Congresswoman from California after some issues with her. So they definitely, could be applying pressure for him to leave, and that's a very good question for the press to ask.
Interesting you bring up Katie Hill. She wrote a piece about her relationship with Matt Gaetz, who was one of the few people who stood up for her at the time she was going through her travails. She considered him, quote unquote, a friend. Doesn't any longer, and that was the most robust from anybody really on this issue. Here's another one. He's speaking at a Republican women's meeting this weekend, by the way, at Trump's Doral Hotel. I hope they all don't get bed bugs, which I've been at the Trump Doral Hotel. Used to be one of the best hotels in Florida. Amy Kramer's Women for America First is hosting this event where Gaetz is going to be the keynote. The mind reels. At a Trump hotel, Republican women.
Yeah, well, that's America First. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what do you say at this point? Lord. It's true. It's crazy. There's something so sick in all of this. Because Gaetz is symbolic to me. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You clearly have something you want to say. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's just he obviously, it's been the most bizarre defense I've ever seen. A week ago and managed to completely alienate Carlson, as we talked about last week. So he's been weird. I mean, he had this statement this week that referred to himself in the third person. Matt Gaetz has never slept with me. Matt Gaetz does not visit sexually explicit websites. I mean, it's just sort of a bizarre.
Well, it's not
defense.
Though. I actually have a note to talk about this. I was going to do it in another frame. We can do it right now. This is just a page out of Trump's playbook, sweetie, because here's what he does. Trump.
Yeah, well, did not.
No, I was just going to say that.
Not.
Gentlemen first.
Nothing unusual about a politician denying it.
No, he's not denying. That's not dude. He's Trump's great gift, and this quite is to go with it, not to run away from it. In other words, I'm not quitting. I'm staying in. I'm this, I'm that. I'm going to make appearances. I'm going to post on Twitter. Politicians in the old days would put their head between their legs and get on their knees and, crawl out. None of that here. Something they learned from Trump.
Right. Well, it's, I think that's a good point.
It's a scary point
because we'll see what the potential charges are, and then he'll have to address it more directly.
Yeah, he'll just get his lawyers on and whatever. But Trump has been quiet. Yeah, right. Trump is quiet in one sense, except to say that he's allowing Doral to be used for this meeting, which says something. It's a statement of sorts.
Yeah.
Let me just look at my notes and make sure I got everything I think I did. So then we do move on to Governor Ron DeSantis. I'm going to be quiet.
You want to take it here?
No, I'm giving it. No, I'm going to give it to you. There's a reason I'm giving it to you. You take it, and then I'll tell you why I gave it. Go ahead.
Well, I guess the latest thing, is, obviously of the open movement restrictions under COVID. This latest thing is a 60 Minutes report that said that the state had to deal with Publix, the supermarket that's in Florida and much of the South, and said, they could get an exclusive deal doing inoculations, and Publix had also given him a lot of money. CBS report kind of tied the two together. DeSantis seemed to have a pretty good defense. I'd be curious what you think, saying, well, giving it to Publix is the idea also of a lot of other officials down there, some Democrats. It all worked out pretty well. So what's the big scandal? It's not really quid pro quo. And, CBS has doubled down on claims. DeSantis mounted defense. I'm curious what you take.
First of all, let me say that this is just one part of the garbage that he has been doing all along, DeSantis. Remember that he also was funneling vaccines to Republican strongholds. I couldn't get a vaccine because I don't live in a Republican stronghold. And so my area was last on the bottom. It was only after the story broke that he was, by the way, making these vaccines available to everybody, but that it finally became available first in Publix here. Now, I did talk to Moskowitz, and he and I went a round or two, who, he came in the defense of all of this and said, no, none of this is how it happened. Nobody told us what to do. That's his defense. Matt, if Ron DeSantis is up to no good, whether it be a Democrat or a Republican, he's not going to them and say, do this because I'm getting money. So that is the most absurd, ridiculous thing. These guys, and Moskowitz included, are protecting themselves, the mayor of Palm Beach, because they're in the thick of it. And if they don't come into DeSantis' defense, he's going to take them out and down.
Right.
So you have to understand the politics of this. 60 Minutes hit the nail on the head here. There's not a person in Florida who wasn't aware of the craziness that was going on, particularly, with the Publix part. But I told you it wasn't just Publix. Now, Moskowitz says to me, Halli, the dates are wrong here. And I said, how are the dates wrong? If you go and you Google it, you will see. Because I said to him, there were more Walmart neighborhood pharmacies. There are more of the other pharmacies. I ultimately got mine through the federal program, not through DeSantis. It was made available to Walmart through Biden's team. And they're trying to say, no. Publix came forward and said Publix could do it first. Well, first of all, we also know part of that story was Publix is everywhere except in black neighborhoods and Hispanic neighborhoods. So there is so much wrong here. So on the face of it, yeah, but if you start getting into the weeds of it, you see everybody's got an agenda in Florida. This is the most corrupt political state. Everybody's trying to protect their little turf. And they're being strong-armed now, I'm sure, by DeSantis and by Trump. Because they're all in this thing together. So that's my take. 60 Minutes needs to do a follow-up here, though, I will say that, and clear up some of the stuff. What do you...
Yeah. Okay, well, that's interesting. I haven't followed this closely, but that's troubling.
But what's really troubling to me is the media is not... I hate to keep... Hey, you and I are two members of the media. But the media is just not getting into the. That's 60 Minutes. But I'm saying
that big gun.
No. I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about 60 Minutes. I'm talking about. Although the Orlando Sentinel has really done a great job. Actually, all the papers have been going after DeSantis all over the place. But nationwide, the details keep getting lost, and I don't get it. I just don't get it. So, and the opinion writers are not talking politics the way they should and understanding how politics works and making that clear to people who are reading their opinions. In one sense, the media is treating DeSantis, by the way, like they treated Trump. He's the bad boy and they're kind of enjoying it. And so they're making him the next, let's make a bad guy. And then we'll get a lot of, clicks. You got any thoughts on that?
I'm just not as close to it as you are. I'm embarrassed. I just haven't followed it to the same degree.
Well, let me ask you this: he's the governor of Florida. How come you know his name?
Well, I mean, it's our third most populous state.
Yeah, but who was the last governor?
Who was the last governor? Rick Scott.
Yeah, you remember, but how many do? That's my point.
Well, not much. I mean. Yeah, I mean, he's made a bit of a name for himself. He had this crazy pro-Trump ads when he was running, and
Monkey.
He's a dude. Well, I'm glad you're there.
Well, I wish I didn't. I wish it wasn't the way that it is. How do you like that? I wish it wasn't the way that, and it makes me very sad. In the 50s and 60s, I was going to say in the 50s and 60s, this was a one-horse town, but it's not. It's like you said, it's the third most populated state in the country. This low-life politics shouldn't still be the name of the game here. We should have gotten past this, but we didn't. By the way, 3,000 variant cases in Florida as of yesterday. Double what they are anywhere else. So there you go.
Well, so that goes.
Yeah, and that's pretty scary too. You were going to say something else before I so rudely interrupted you again.
I mean, my sense is that the Republicans have been strong in the state for a long time, presidentially, and big Republican delegations, and the state has control. But I think under Bush, Martinez, other Republican is loopy. As it's been of Scott and Antis.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, if you think back to the presidential elections, I mean, this one wasn't close.
No.
But they have been in the past. I mean, this is, obviously, famously so, but even after Bush v. Gore. So.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah, and and as I say to you, I personally don't know all these Republicans. I don't understand some of what's going on in the state, but I will say the Democratic Party, absolutely.
Yeah. From what I can tell, I think if they got a shot at it.
I think so.
I don't think it'll be easy, but he's not super among Republicans, and he's not quite MAGA enough, Trumpy, and I think he's a little more vulnerable than people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, he's the butt of a joke at this point, which is kind of sad. But then there's the Alcee Hastings passed away, and that's going to be another because DeSantis is going to stop any kind of vote there for as long as he possibly can to keep that seat open.
But there's no question where that seat's going, right?
I don't know. There are a lot of people who aren't so sure. I haven't delved into that one enough, but times are changing. We'll see. Let's get to the voter suppression thing in the MLB. So the story continues, right? Major League Baseball got involved.
Right.
The Major League Baseball moved the All-Star Game from Georgia, which, by the way, is 57% black, to Denver, which is 76% white. That's an interesting stat. I say great. Now, of course, Republicans are absolutely losing their cookies over this, particularly Minority Leader McConnell.
Well, as is Stacey Abrams, Warnock, Ossoff.
Because jobs were lost.
Yeah, but that's.
But I say that's
about.
It's worth talking about. But I also bring up the fact that it's a short-term loss for a long-term gain, in my opinion. But
unless it hurts Warnock, there's huge consequences.
You think it will? I think it'll be a story that was yesterday's news by that point. I'm sorry.
Probably. I don't know. Well, we'll see. Anyway, it was an interesting There's obviously an interest by baseball and by these corporations down there and interest position.
So what I had forgotten and had to be reminded of last night was that this is not new for corporations to get involved in civil rights. Because in the 60s, Coca-Cola and a whole bunch of others, stood with the civil rights movement. So there's a history of this, even though, as I started to say, Mr. McConnell lost his cookies over it. He, who, the long champion of big misses and advocate for Citizens United, I think Manfred was brilliant on this from a moral point. And your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly corporations have, stepped in on some of these divisive social issues. They did a big push for gay marriage when that went to the Supreme Court, filing amicus briefs and doing other things to help that cause, in part out of pressure from employees, in part from customers, and so on. So they've definitely, stepped into this stuff and other, kind of religious issues, like the KKs and, Hobby Lobby and other things. So corporations are in it. In the 60s, Coca-Cola had a huge internal business, of course. They were expanding in the then decolonizing third world. And, it was embarrassing to have civil rights issues in their own backyard. So I wouldn't say they were super enthusiastic. But there's famously the business threw a dinner for Martin Luther King after he got the Nobel Prize, which now seems like a huge so what, but it was a big deal with them. So, Coke did a lot to help make Atlanta a less racially charged atmosphere. And that's partly why Atlanta grew so much. Atlanta, Birmingham, Memphis were pretty close in size after two. But Atlanta took off in large part of its more tolerant racial atmosphere that made it easier for corporations to move there. I'll be curious what the deterrent effect is on other legislators, right? I mean, Georgia's not law, but, does it stop others? Well, you saw Kristi Noem reverse herself on this trans law in South Dakota, and that is one very conservative state, and reportedly because pressure from Amazon. So I think overall it may have a bit of a deterrent effect on more laws like this.
I'm glad to see this. You know what? I'm thrilled to see this because I think it gets it out of the MAGA versus Democrat and takes it to a different level.
Yes, I think that.
So I think it's important that they did this at this time. I'm going to tell you a personal story. My dad was very friendly with, more than very friendly with the New York Yankees back in the day. And I don't know if I ever told you this. I grew up with Maris and Mantle and all the and.
Oh my God! Ralph. Are you Mickey Mantle's love child?
It's remarkable. They used to tell me I looked just like him when I was a kid with my blonde hair and blue eyes. But I grew up with them in my home, and I remember Elston Howard. I don't know if you remember Elston Howard, but black player for the Yankees. And I grew up in this town, Englewood, right across from Manhattan. And so the Englewood Country Club had this great golf club, so they all joined the chorus. And anyway, long story short, he couldn't get a place to stay because nobody would rent to a black guy in Englewood. I tell you this because my father finally found him a home. And my dad made a big deal of telling my sister and myself about this story, and that you should never, think somebody's color makes a difference to them, yada, yada, yada. So that's how I grew up. So this to me was like baseball's big time in my childhood, right? My life. This was great. And if anybody was going to do it, I was thrilled. I know my dad, may you rest in peace, Daddy, is just loving this. Just loving that element.
Right.
So
it's Jackie Robinson all over again.
Yeah. So people always write me and ask me personal stuff about me. There's a story from me. Doris Kearns Goodwin and I have talked about it on this show, by the way. She always says a Boston thing. I was the first girl to be in the Yankees. Snuck me in when I was a kid.
That's a clip.
That's going to go in my memoirs, should I ever write them. Okay. Enough about me and that and whatever. Thank you. I applaud Major League Baseball. Infrastructure. Is that still on the table? That's still a story with all this craziness?
Oh, yeah. I think very much so. I think the Biden administration got good news this week from the Senate parliamentarian who's paving the way for them to be able to pass this huge bill with only 50 votes in it. That makes it much, much easier for the Biden administration to have a shot at getting this through. It's no guarantee. He's got to get all the Democrats on board, and they're being a little fetchy. So, he's got a way to go. But, I mean, it is a big deal if he gets this thing through right after the first step through. This is trillions of dollars. There's lots of social programs baked into infrastructure. It's a very big deal. So
it's shifting. It's a shift. It's a huge shift culturally. This bill,
no question. It's like LBJ without Vietnam.
Exactly. I think it's important to bring that up. I want to talk about Joe Manchin in this thing on two levels. Okay, so right now the corporate tax rate is the lowest it's been since I think 2012. So, and of course, Manchin says the 28% that's in the bill is just too much. No. But I think, could there be a pattern here? Manchin is sitting in a horrid place because he's in a state that used to be Democratic that is full on MAGA right now, and he's like, the moderate Dem senator. Oh my gosh. So he's balking, and I think there's a style that I'm seeing, which is, I don't want 28, but what's the compromise position? I have to play that card. What did Biden really think he was going to get on that corporate tax thing? Raise, right?
Right.
Was he going to get it to 28? Was that where he started high and figured he'd have to finagle with them to get it, to where he really wants it? So watch this. I just don't think that Manchin's a spoiler, or for that matter.
No, I agree. Yeah. I don't think he's.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, it's important that we. Yeah, I mean, if we're going to do our job, that point needs watch this, because the whole thing isn't going to go down on that, and that's for sure. So I think it's extraordinary, and it brings up this too, because I want to talk about the migrants, but I want to let's just take the natural progression here. Joe Biden is doing extraordinarily well. I mean, for starter presidencies, this one's pretty spectacular, in my opinion. In a way, he's the new Teflon king. Because those Republicans are throwing everything they can at him, baby. And gosh, it's just rolling right off it, right? It's Teflon with butter. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, absolutely. It is going well. We're getting shots in our checks in the mail and shovels on the ground.
That's the title of the show.
That's a pretty, that's a good shtick. And, his poll ratings reflect it. Now, it's not totally smooth sailing. At some point, a big part of the public is going to really gulp at the size of the spending. You may have inflation pressures. I don't think we will, but I think it's likely, at least in the short term, that happens, but not in the long term. But, he's in remarkable shape. I think Bush took the lesson in 2000, even though he won the presidency by like 50 votes, and Anthony Kennedy. He said, look, I'm just going to get a majority. And that's kind of what Biden is doing. I mean, he's making overtures to bipartisanship, but basically he's governing at 60 votes.
But he does have a huge majority. Let me tell you why. Let me just throw this in, because this is something that just came out this morning. Let me find my note, because I want to be correct on the statistic here. Wait a second. Okay, a Gallup this morning. 49% of Americans identify as Dem. Identifying as Republican is down to 25% to 40% Republican. The rest are independent, which is notable. We haven't had this huge gap in thousands of years, if you will. That does give him power, because even though the political guys are being morons and not playing, doing their job, the citizens are saying, we ain't going with you.
Are you talking about elected officials? Guys?
Yeah, the elected officials. The Republicans are on a completely different plane than this poll indicates.
Oh, yeah. The Republicans, they don't have any game. That's why they're Dr. Seuss and trans rights, and they just the border crisis. They just haven't put it together into a stinging critique. And there was an old phrase in the olden times, dime store New Republicans were kind of for stuff Democrats were for, but cheaper. And that's kind of what they're for. I mean, they're still for big infrastructure, and they were still for sending checks. They were just for less of it. And that's That's not a place.
No, and let me throw this back at you. Let me just say, they're having an identity crisis because, look, only a few years ago, McConnell, Citizens United Corporation, oh my gosh, they were the party of the elites, the Presbyterians, the Episcopalians, white college graduate party, right? Now they're the party of the white working man. And the irony of it is they're the ones, the white working men, they won't even give them a raise, for Christ's sakes. They haven't had one since what? Probably the year. To $15 an hour. They're forcing these white men, and they're willing to go along with the party, and women, by the way, to slave wages. I mean, so they don't know who do they represent? Who do they stand for? In other words, what you're saying, on the one hand, we're now, we're the blue collar savior. On the other, we're cheap and we're not going to give you the raise you deserve. I mean, they're lost. That gives a wide opening to Biden.
No, I agree. I mean, their runs at populism, like screw the tech industry. We're going to take baseball's antitrust exemption. They're not. Listen, I don't think those are right.
This is the little First Amendment issue.
Look,
yeah. You agree?
Look, I think, I agree. I think, the base of the party changed. The party the party had a hard time going up the base. Now, Trump kind of mastered it in the 2016 race. He kind of reflected the new status in the party, and people like Jeb Bush were left, as roadkill. And I don't think, Mitch and Kevin McCarthy got this figured out yet. I'm surprised they're not just, even if it's only tax hikes on the rich and the Biden, then they should just go, taxes.
I think they are. I think they are, by the way. I think you're hearing rumblings of that, but it's not resonating. Your point.
It's so muddled in everything else they're doing, they're coming for your kids to transsexuals. I mean,
but when you got nothing, you got nothing. That's the problem. You got nothing. I also look at, there
is a critique. There is a critique to be said. It's good. I don't know. I don't agree with it, but there is a critique that says, look, the economy is picking up a lot of steam. We've already done a few trillion we've done a few trillion in stimulus already last year and this year. We don't need another, few trillion. Let's just, let the engines go and don't start raising taxes. That would not be a terrible place to be for us, but that's not quite where.
Well, except to say two things. One thing is that even though it looks like the economy is booming on some levels, in people of color and that blue collar worker is not feeling the burn. They're hurting. They're still hurting. So where the problem in the society is, and it's for years and years and years of Republican rule, ignoring that class of society and, given all these tax cuts to the wealthy and to the corporations and screw the little guy who hasn't had a wage increase in like 30 years or some crazy thing like that with the, I think that's what slows them down on that.
No, I agree. Obviously, you're back to where it was. There are all these long-term issues, but
I'm going to make a prediction.
All I'm saying is better.
Well, there's always a better argument, but they're not cohesive, so you can't make an argument if you're not cohesive. I'm going to make a prediction here, Matt. Something you just said, and I'm feeling like we're about to go into the go-go 20s, sort of like Clinton's go-go 80s.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have said that. Yeah.
You can feel it. People are going to be let loose in a couple of months, and and it's summertime, and it's like yay, and we got money to spend, unfound money. How So I'm looking. So there may be inflationary problems that are going to come along, but I think Janet Yellen's going to handle that, and that's going to be great. But I go back to. The only other part of this story that I wanted to just briefly, the other thing is that Biden is not a polarizing figure. He's like the least polarizing figure that we've had since FDR, I swear. FDR was not always not polarizing. But think about who's been around for the last, 20 years? Obama, Hillary, Trump, and then think Joe
George
Biden.
W. Bush, Clinton,
right.
Bill Clinton.
Yeah. It's this is the first unnutty presidency we've had since Eisenhower, maybe.
No, I think that's why Republicans are, reduced to saying he's senile and AOC is really president.
Yeah, I find that just glorious. Just glorious. All right, I've got to move on. I want to talk about the migrants briefly because it's off the front pages of. It shouldn't be, but it is. But I'm going to bring it up to you in 2 points, or maybe 3. First of all, did America ever really want the tired, the poor, and the huddled masses? I was thinking about that the other day. What you think? I don't know. Maybe that doesn't require an answer. I just wanted to throw it out there. But I do.
Well, ambivalence. Let's just ambivalence.
Okay. All right. You call it your thing. I'll call mine. The story is off the front pages. As I said, he gave the portfolio of the problem to Vice President Harris, who has done nothing. She hasn't even been down to the border. She's moving into the vice president's quarters yesterday, I guess, finally. But I don't know, there's something weird going on there. You got anything on that? Silent Kamala.
Well, let's see where it goes. I agree with that. I mean, I think you take her to the border to draw more attention.
I get that.
Yeah, I bet the security system doesn't really allow for this. So, she should at least get the central heads of state up. I agree. Look, she's been given a, really impossible task, and it's tough. But on the other hand, she wasn't a bad choice for it. She's from a border state, foreign relations committee. I mean, it's person of color, not the worst choice you could have had if you're Biden. If you're Harris, all you can smart take it on. It's not a. If
you're Harris, you better do something huge here if you want a future as a presidential candidate. Tough.
I think so, unless it just resolves itself. In other words, like
it's not going to resolve itself, baby. It's just not going to resolve it. It never resolved itself in 50 years. It needs resolving. But let me throw this out at you. I'm really curious as to this goes back to what I was talking about Biden. Quietly, small story, page 90. Biden's will complete the construction on the border wall to fix the gaps. This is the brilliance of Joe Biden. He throws a bone. You and I may not have picked it up, or whatever, but Mr. Average Joe America. But I will tell you, the Republicans did. That's where he is so good, because what other president would have done that after the whole debacle with Trump and building the wall and the $5 billion gazoola dollars?
Yeah.
So, there's a story in that too. I think it's important to discuss it. We move on. Israel, very briefly. There's a mess.
Yeah.
So I guess Netanyahu got the package that he can go ahead and see if he can, the first try to form a coalition government. Doesn't look good. Doesn't look good for the other side either. His trial is back on. He's taken a play out of Trump's playbook, which is it's a witch hunt. Your thoughts?
Well, this better than I do. I mean, it's just, we've seen this movie before, right? You get this dysfunctional party system at the moment, and he's left trying to clean up the pieces. It's harder for him while he's, on trial, and that doesn't make things easy. But things, as you've noted, have been going Israel's way for a while with accords with the Gulf states, and a still good economy and great success in vaccinations. So, he's got the wind in his back in ways, and in other ways not. You can't count the guy out, so,
You can't count the what? I didn't hear what you said. You can't
count Netanyahu.
Oh, Netanyahu.
Out. I mean, I think Ben must stay prime minister, but who knows?
I don't know whether he is or he's not. I talked to Ruthie Blum, and we'll get her on the show one of these days. It's crazy around all of us right now. But she said to me that it's going back to a fifth vote, no matter how they play it. On the other hand, I think there is it's so crazy over there. The trial is upsetting to me because I just don't see this guy as a finagler any more than Average Joe, and this is a real hit job. But it's my understanding it could take 3 years for this trial to continue on, so that's kind of strange too.
Oy
is right. Same on, I want to talk about the messaging here also with Biden, because Biden has been all over the map, his team, on where they are and how they're going to handle the Israeli-Palestinian issue, Iran. I think they really would like to put all of that on the back burner because, and this is what I wanted to get to, Biden's moving at like 100 billion miles an hour to get all of his legislation done, because there is nobody smarter than Joe Biden to know that all of this could change on a dime. Somebody dies, somebody drops out, somebody gets indicted, whatever.
Right.
So all this other stuff is like noise to him. He's got one goal and one goal. He's getting this infrastructure thing done, come hell or high water. That's where I think he is. Anything else there before I move on to the next thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, you can make your name in foreign policy after you've lost Congress in 2 years. That's when you can throw yourself into, the Mideast quack or whatever.
Oh my gosh,
China.
Yeah.
So right now, while you're getting shit done, you want to keep doing it.
Capitol Hill stabbing and shooting, another office, crime spike all over the country. I don't want to spend 9 hours on this, but we got to bring it up because it's a problem. What do you think?
Well, you got the regular crime, and then you got the crazy crime like the attack on the Asian American woman in New York City, and then you got political crime, and I think this is something I think Garland and the administration need much more public facing about. The crime wave, what's happening. It's happening all over the country, especially in cities. And I think, they've come out with, kind of mini plans for everything. And I haven't really gotten a sense they have on this. So I
think they're
now Biden's smart enough as the author. And look, Biden ran in very uncomfortable years in the Senate. 1972, he gets elected in the Nixon landslide. 78 was a terrible year for Democrats. 84 was the Reagan landslide. So he's faced some tough wins on crime. He thought about crime his whole career. I'm a little surprised he hasn't gotten out.
I think he's thinking this is going to go away once the economy picks up.
Yeah, but it predates the economy.
I agree.
And I think he's a little cowed by people. He doesn't want to start doing.
He doesn't want to make an issue of it. That's what
I think it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I hear you. We'll see. But it needs to be talked about because this may be another one that picks up after he gets the legislation. I want to bring up the Navalny case in Russia. This just makes me sick. Yeah. I mean, this guy is, they're killing him. Amnesty International finally opened up a mouth today. I'm like, where have you been? Saying that we're wall watching a long, painful, slow execution of Navalny, who was so sick. He went on a hunger strike, but he also may have been exposed to TB in this facility. And while he's going through all of this, his doctor comes, they won't let him in, and Putin declares himself, the president for life. And what a mess over there. And I just think that the government in this country has been really remiss in not opening up a mouth about this, because this is such a flagrant case of human rights abuse. Stop it. This one deserves attention. You got anything? Sorry, but this really upsets me.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, the Russians are, Putin is as Biden said, a killer, and it's really awful. And I see that Maria Butina, Russian national, tried to be in NRA and got, went to jail in the U.S. And deported was sent out by Russian TV to interview and do a story about how great things.
Just sick stuff. I'm glad that you brought up the NRA, by the way, who's in the bankruptcy trial right now. And this gets uglier by the minute. They should be shut down and people should go to jail. I just don't understand how come it's just in bankruptcy court. You got anything on the NRA? We're on lightning round right now, so talk quick.
Yeah, no. I mean, they seem to violate laws.
Yeah, and it looks like nobody wants to take them on to the degree they need to be taken on, but they should be taken on. I want to go back and just say one thing, because we're not avoiding it. There's really not enough to say right now on the trial that's going on the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin case. It's just we're in the midst of it. We'll get to it when it at a proper time, when we have more than just day-to-day stuff. I want to bring up this John Boehner, former majority leader. Oh my God, has a book coming out, I guess. Yikes. This is going to be blockbuster stuff. I mean, he's already, they're dribbling it out a little bit, but this morning he was after Trump, like calling him out for inciting the January 6th insurrection, all but called him a terrorist. Boehner supported him in 2016, did not in 2020. It gets to the same old story, though. All these Republicans, him, the whole gang who aren't there anymore, who just refused up to what was happening in the party. So in one sense, I'm like, I can't wait to read this book. On the other hand, I'm like, okay, buddy, but you know what? You should have opened a mouth and we wouldn't be where we are right now. Just, that's where I am on Boehner. You got anything?
Yeah, look, he's in a lot of ways a figure. But, we could have had immigration empathy. In fact, the Hastert rule wouldn't bring it up for vote, even though it passed overwhelmingly in the Senate. That's a big deal. But so it's hard to forgive him for that. But I'm going to read the book.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is the stuff that bestsellers are made out of.
Yeah.
Hunter Biden, interesting figure, this Hunter Biden.
Yeah, I mean, I know him a bit, and
really,
it's a sad story. I haven't read the book. It seems like it's quite revealing about himself, at least in the addiction, and it gives you a sense of just how kind of out of control he was, how out of control addicts can become, and how much they can damage the people around them. So it's really quite a book to put out. Your dad's present.
Did you see the CBS This Morning interview?
I've seen excerpts, but I did not watch it.
There's something odd about him. He doesn't have his father's or his mom's demeanor. He is off by about 40 degrees. It's sad. It's sad. You almost get the feeling like he still hasn't quite gotten it. He's trying, though, and you get that feeling, too. It's a heartbreaking story, to be sure. Just a little note, I'm moving quick here. Did you know that Jim Jordan hasn't passed a single piece of legislation into law in his 14 years in Congress? Just thought I'd throw that out there. Here's another did you know. Did you know that the majority of Americans want to see Matthew McConaughey and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson run for political office? And now Caitlyn Jenner is floating the idea that she's going to run for governor of California. What a girl won't do for a little PR.
Well, it's a free country. All you got to be is
Andrew Giuliani said he's going to run against Andrew Cuomo. By the way, have you seen a picture?
Not since he was 9.
I suggest you take a look at the picture, because if he's not Donald Trump's love child, I don't know who is.
Yeah, he doesn't look like his...
He looks exactly like Donald Trump with red hair.
Wow. But it's hard to picture Donald Trump and Donna.
I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you.
Mrs. Giuliani at that time.
I'm just telling you. It's weird. Trump appeared on Newsmax. Low ratings. Is he sinking into oblivion, Max? Max. Matt.
Is he sinking into oblivion? No.
But it is odd that he hasn't getting the ratings, isn't it?
Well, I don't know if there's much warning, right? I mean, they have time to really chin up the audience.
Well, yeah. I mean, the Fox News, hello.
Yeah, well, he needs to, if he goes on Laura Ingraham.
Greg Gutfield says he's getting into late night comedy wars.
Right, started Monday night.
Did you watch?
No.
I find him to be the least funny. Well, you ought to take that slot.
Yeah, I've watched him a lot. I've never found him.
He's not funny. He's goofy.
He's snarky. He doesn't seem that smart. I know people who know him who say he's kind of once. It's smart for Fox, right? I mean, we're in the middle of the culture war. You're crazy to join the culture shaped so much by late night. So, it's smart for Fox to do. I bet he does well.
I find him absolutely unfunny. Like you said, snarky, stupid, goofy.
Goofy.
Goofy. There's something goofy about him.
He's no Dennis Miller. I mean, if you have to find conservative comment,
yeah, right.
Probably.
What are you going to do?
He's not funny.
No, he isn't. But I do you know any Republicans who are?
Yeah, sure.
Do you?
I'm hard pressed to think. Yeah. I know Republicans who are, but
I don't. All my
it's
Republican
hard to think of
friends aren't funny.
Professional conservative comic who are funny.
Yeah, they're just not funny people. Yeah. Helen Mirren is to play Golda Meir, Israel's prime minister, fourth prime minister, first woman prime minister, in a new movie. Just thought I'd throw that out. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, well, she did an Israeli, Commando. That movie.
That was a good movie.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of hers.
She'd be. It's excellent casting.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what point of view. I think the producers lean a little more left. Hey, we'll see. This just in. Wait, before I do this just in, what did I not bring up that you might want to finish on?
We'll come back to.
Yeah. I just, like I said before, I don't think that, there's much we can add to that. This just in, 10 more members of Congress joined the NAACP lawsuit against Trump and Giuliani for conspiring to incite the U.S. Capitol riot. Cohn, Karen Bass, Bonnie Watson, Coleman.
Okay.
The list goes on. Here's the thing, though. The reason I want to end on this is because I think of all the things that I get from people, all the, the emails that I get and the comments on Twitter. It's why are the Democrats doing nothing about the insurrection? You got an answer?
Yeah. No, I agree. I can't believe there aren't hearings on it. And, obviously, FBI is doing arrests, investigation, whatnot. But it's crazy for Democrats not to get more of this documented and on the record and report because, the revisionism is going on. I mean, Tucker Carlson the other night was just, it was just unbelievable. 20 minutes of whitewashing the whole thing. Other people, they were just loitering. To see their congressman deal. It's violent like alum. It was no deal.
There is absolutely nothing coming out of this Congress, this Democrat-controlled Congress, that's holding anybody accountable for the Trump years on any level. And I find it just bizarre. It means you can do whatever you want to do and get away with it, and that's the end of that. It's just,
Yeah, well, I agree. They're not using their investing powers to maximum effect. Because when they lose them, at some point they will, it's going to be fucking Hunter Biden every day.
I know. So, go figure. So, it's not a perfect situation up there on Capitol Hill. I don't know. Maybe Nancy's getting tired, and Chuck is.
Well, it's like Obama. We don't want to look back.
It's bad. It's a mistake. We're
going to work our legislation. Why we litigate the past?
Till next week.
Till next week.
Ta-ta.
Ta-ta.